Hi, my name is Stanislav Kostyuk, and welcome to Farlands, a series about video games and video game design. Today, we're going to start talking about cohesive game experience. This topic is going to be explored in 3 videos. In this first one, we're going to talk about what a cohesive game experience is as a concept. In the second video, we will take a look at several games and how they achieve, or don't, cohesion. And in the final part, we'll discuss guidelines that will help to create cohesive game experience. Without further ado, let's begin. So what is cohesion? I think it's something that's best explained visually. Let's take a look at these 2 paintings, The Scream and Woman with a Mandolin. Everything seems okay, right? Now, let's introduce some awfully photoshopped elements. Suddenly, it's not so okay. The point is, the originals of these paintings are of different styles, moods, and may or may not be to your taste, but they are organic within the context of themselves. This is what cohesion in creative mediums is, when all elements of a work of art work together to form something whole, without any elements that stand out in a negative way. Cohesion in video games is a very extensive topic. It's more like even a big collection of many topics. The scope of this video series is to take a look at cohesion on a more conceptual level, so some details may be omitted. What makes this topic so big is the fact that video games have a lot of widely different elements interacting with each other. Gameplay, technology, narrative, visuals, sound, they don't sit in their own vacuums. The connection between gameplay and narrative is the most noticeable one, how the mechanics represent the context and fantasy of the game, be it through a predefined narrative or stories created by players themselves. This particular branch deserves not one but a whole bunch of videos, and there are some already on my channel that you can watch. Relationship between the player and the game through controls, and characterization through mechanics. There is also the connection between gameplay and technology, which is a very symbiotic relationship, as technology needs to allow the game to try and achieve what it wants through its mechanics. At the same time, the mechanics need to take into account the tech limitations that can't be overcome at that point. Evolution of first-person shooters is something that shows this very well, and how technological and gameplay boundaries get pushed further over time. Then, of course, the visual and sound presentation too are really interdependent with technology, but they also have a very important task of making sure that the narrative, context, fantasy, and mood of the game are represented correctly, using the tech that's available at the time. There is a very famous story about the first Silent Hill. The fog was actually a limitation of the PlayStation platform that the developers used to their advantage to create a spookier atmosphere for their horror game. Plus, visuals and sounds need to work together to make sure that whatever is happening on screen does not conflict with one another. That when somebody swings a sword, you don't hear an effect that sounds like a chicken. Unless, of course, that is a special chicken sword, in which case, that's fine. And let's not forget about gameplay, where sounds and visuals are used to provide feedback and clarity to the players, what gameplay state they are in, and so on. If you're exploring, hearing battle music is weird. If you pressed a button, you need to understand that the action was achieved, and so on. And even narrative and technology are interconnected as well, as if there are any particular tech limits that can't be solved, like let's say you can show only a couple NPCs at the same time, that has to be contextualized in a way that the tech limitation doesn't bring down the suspension of disbelief. In the end, we have a web where each area of the game interacts with every other area of the game. And in well-thought-out games, these aren't just random interactions. They all work together to form and provide a particular experience to the players. That experience, respectively, should leave the players with different feelings and emotions, and these are 2 very key words that I'll repeat quite often throughout the video series. But why is cohesion so important? Well, there is the obvious answer. Cohesive games are, as a rule, generally of a higher quality, are more beloved by players, and tend to be more successful in terms of sales than they would have been otherwise. Though the last particular point, sadly, in some cases is debatable. The less obvious answer, but no less important, is the simple fact that players and developers perceive games differently. Players take in the game and the experience it has to offer as one whole, Like with any other form of art, paintings, movies, books, dance, etc. They can define and talk about what they liked or didn't like, but they're not going to delve deep into the inner workings to analyze how each particular element works with one another, unless, of course, they're the hardcore players. But even those in their first playthrough would perceive it as a whole. They interact with the game to engage in experience it's got to offer. Developers, on the other hand, see a game as something divided into a big number of little building blocks, or in other words, features. This is very important, as without that we'd never be able to complete any project due to complexity of even simple games. But the side effect is that we don't actually feel the proper experience the game provides until pretty late stages of development. Somebody more cynical would say even that we just do things hoping that in the end everything is going to be alright. A big responsibility of game designers, creative directors, and vision holders is to try and make sure that the little things that are being built are on track towards the final desired goal. A single, wholesome game that players will enjoy and will get particular feelings and emotions that will stay with them for a long time. And it's hard. Sometimes there's oversights or omissions. There is the concept of ludonarrative dissonance coined by Clint Hawking, which ultimately is lack of cohesion between gameplay and narrative. This kind of stuff doesn't necessarily mean the game is bad though. However, there are some specifics that have to be kept in mind. But there's only so much that I can say in broad theoretical terms what a cohesive game experience is, and I hope this video was enough to lay the groundwork for our conversation. In the next video, we're going to take an in-depth look at 3 different games and how the concept of cohesive game experience applies to them, including those specifics I've mentioned earlier. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave any comments below. I hope to see you again in the next part of this series. And if you'd like, consider supporting my work on Patreon. Recently, I've updated the Patreon rewards with a new tier and a couple additions to each one. Feel free to take a look and see if they're of interest to you. A special thank you goes to Paolo Di Stefano. Your support is very appreciated. Thank you very much.